mean, do I even need to do an introduction? As you guys can tell, as you guys have clicked on this video, you would know. Today, I am going to be doing my first review, first impressions of the brand new NATASHA DENONA Bloom eyeshadow palette, her newest spring eyeshadow palette launch. So where can you get this guy? It is currently available on the NATASHA DENONA website, Sephora, and Ulta, probably Beautylish. I will have all of the links down below for that. This palette is $69 and has 15 brand new warm-toned floral hues, all in NATASHA DENONA's already existing formulation. So new colors, but no new formulations. And I've got to tell you, when I got this in the mail, my first impressions of looking at it, I think the packaging is really beautiful. I mean, it's the same style component, just with a different style of artwork. But the colors itself, from the first images I've seen since I did my shopper drop a few days ago, this is a lot warmer than I thought it was going to be. Now, it's very peachy pinky warm. It's not like orange warm or red warm or yellow warm. It's pinky peachy warm, if that makes sense. And it makes sense. I mean, these are absolutely very spring appropriate colors and hues. But you know, I get excited about a cool-toned palette. So when I opened it, I was like, eh. But you know what? I talk trash about warm colors, and then I wear them a lot. So I feel like this is going to be one of those palettes where I'm like looking at it right now and I'm like, it's fine. But then when time goes on, as I'm reaching for makeup without thinking about it, I'm going to probably reach for this one a lot more. But make sure you're subscribed to my channel and we will see if that actually ends up happening. But let's get into it. I'm sure you guys are curious. I'm going to take you over to the swatches, the unboxing, and all of that right now. This is the box that the palette is going to come in. It has her artwork that she did. And then the back here has all of the details of the shade names. The palette's made in Italy with a 24-hour shelf life, and it has a description on each of the formulas and the best way to use them. So nothing new here, really. Good to keep for the numbers of the shades if you are a hunter for repeat shades, because that's kind of how she does it here. Here's the actual palette in the traditional style midi palette for NATASHA DENONA. The artwork is very, very cute here. It has like a little layer of protection, if you can see right here. And then the back, as with normal NATASHA DENONA midi-sized palettes, there's holes here that you can poke through and rearrange as you see fit. And then, of course, here is the colors. Now, one thing I do love to know about the packaging here is that the mirror can stand up on its own, making it really great for just doing your makeup wherever. But okay. But I'll bring you back here to the Bloom palette. And I have to say, based on first impressions opening this palette is very, very warm, very, very peachy, definitely warmer than I was hoping for. But I really shouldn't be surprised because I took the Bloom Blush and Glow palette from years ago. I mean, this eyeshadow palette surely does look like an extension of that Bloom and Glow cheek palette, does it not? So for swatching, the order I'm going to go in is I'm going to keep to this side where the warm shades are first and go like this. And then we'll get to the more pinky shades at the end. So we're going to do Fluorescence, Bark, and Keen, in case you want to see how those sit on the finger. Fluorescence is a metallic medium vivid tangerine. So just a true shimmer shade. Now remember, I don't swatch very hard because that's a better example of how it's going to apply. Bark right here is a creamy matte medium dark gingerbread brown. And then Keen is a matte light medium nude tangerine. So here are the first three shades. We have Crisp, Lush, and Break. Ooh, look at that. Crisp right here feels very, very piecey. I don't really like that. So Crisp is a sparkling foil duochrome coral with gold. Doesn't have too much of a base color. You can see a subtle duochrome. Like one side it's almost clear, and then the other side it has that orangey duochrome. Then we have Lush, a sparkling foiled light nude apricot. That's pretty sheer. I'm going to go in there again. And then Brick is a matte medium bright terracotta. So just that creamy matte formula. Super duper pigmented. Building up Lush just a little bit. But it doesn't build up too much. It doesn't have a lot of grab or creaminess to it in the pan. It stays pretty pressed into the pan, which is not how the original Natasha Denona good old days formula used to be. You used to be able to like get it to swatch down your whole arm. And the final 3 shades of this little 9 portion, Petal, Ember, and then Robin. And that's how they're looking on my fingers. So Petal is a silky matte light salmon shade. Ember is one of my favorite formulas, a sparkling foiled medium brick. And then Robin is a silky matte dusty coral. So that's that left portion of the palette. Very warm, very peachy. The mattes are swatching beautifully. The shimmers are a little lackluster. They're a little bit of a harder press, but we'll see about the application. I dive now into this 6 pan portion here of these more pinky shades. Definitely the portion that I'm excited about. So I'm gonna do Ren and Fleur first. Oh, that's a beautiful satin shade. Rue, and then Floss. So you can see. Rue is a metallic medium light burgundy. And then Floss, or Flows, is a matte medium vintage rose. I've been waiting for Equinox here, but we're gonna do Clover, and then Equinox is the shade that she seems to be the most proud of, that she's calling out. What do you think? That looks really beautiful. It's almost like a pop shade, if you will, in this palette. Clover is a matte dark vivid burgundy in the creamy matte formula. And then Equinox is a sparkling foil duochrome peach with turquoise blue shift, which doesn't have as much of a base as I thought it would, but it does look pretty. And the turquoise isn't true blue, which I think makes it much more wearable. But here's the whole palette. Here are all of the swatches. You can see what I mean when I say the shimmers are a little thinner. I mean, they've been that way the last few palettes, and I've still loved the palettes. But it's something as an OG Natasha Denona fan that I feel the need to verbalize every time that there has been a shift in formulation of the shimmers. But they do look really pretty. Some of them look really piecey and sparkly. This is so you can see how the palette compares to the swatches on the arms. And I would say it doesn't change much between the pan and the actual colored turnout here. So that's very nice. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about when I mean the shimmers used to be so much more creamy and thick. And this palette is expired, multiple years old, and it still got it, you know? So I'm going to use this shade. Like you can already tell, I feel. Like she just don't do it like that anymore. No way these shades are traveling as far and as creamy. Again, I mean, just by touch, completely different. This is almost cream. I mean, this is sickening. This is why I fell in love with the brand, you know? You know? So I don't know what happened, how we got here all these years later. Maybe it has to do with laws. I'm sure she's changed manufacturers and labs and whatever, however you create makeup. But Natasha, your team has been commenting on my stuff, so if you're watching this, bring it back. Bring back this formula. Had to sneak that in there, guys. So I think the swatches were pretty nice. You know, I still am like, ugh. It's not as creamy as it once was, but I thought the swatches were very pretty, and I'm excited to get this on the eyes. Taking a closer look at the color story here, I feel like most of the shades have a purpose of being in this palette. They don't look too close to one another. Maybe all 3 of these weren't necessary in this 9 pan portion, but they might pull a little differently on the eyelid. So I'm going to do 2 looks today, and then I will also have a 3rd look in short form. So make sure you're following me either on Instagram or TikTok to see those. But to come a little closer with my new camera, I feel like you guys can see details really nicely, so I'm so excited for this application, though my skin is struggling. Don't pay attention to that. When I first did my shopper drop, she did not have the looks up yet on the website, and I know for one of the looks, I'm inspired by this one. I don't know exactly what colors she used. I want to use the colors that I want to use, but inspired by that. So how I'm gonna start is with the shade Lush. And I think this uses just the 9 pan portion over here. So Lush, I have Milani eye primer on. I'm going to press on my eyelid, just the inner part of the eyelid. So I have nothing except Milani eyeshadow primer on. I didn't really blend the concealer too far in over my eyelid. And this is applying very nicely with a brush. It's definitely on the more PC side, right? So if you want more of an opaque level of color, go in with a finger. And I don't have any concealer on my under eye, so fallout's not going to be an issue for me. But that's pretty, very subtle, and I did end up with Lush. Going in with a finger. This is going to be a pretty one and done style shadow. I'm actually going to take a little bit of Keen because I want to see this as my initial base color for the crease. It's pretty, very light. If you have a deeper complexion, let me know what you think how these matte shades are gonna be. Is there enough deep shades in there for you? This pool's really warm, actually, just with that second level of buildup. So next up, I'm gonna take Fluorescence. I don't think she actually used this shade on this look, but I'm just gonna, no, I think she did, because it pools more orange on the eyelid. It looks a little bit more peachy, pinky, rosy. But on my eyelid, it's pooling a little bit more orangey. But I'm just keeping that on the lower half of the center of my eyelid. You could also go ahead and use a brush with this one. This one would go good with a brush. Oh yeah, actually I'm even getting more pigment with a brush. And then I'm gonna take Ember, which I'm nervous about using this with a brush. Let's see. Okay, just because it's quicker for me, I'm gonna use my finger, but you can work around with a brush if you need to. And I'm carrying it into the crease, like so. So working really nicely, very easy to use. Taking a small blending brush, working that out. Interesting, we only have that one matte color in the crease. But I think for this being mostly all shimmers, this is looking so pretty. I'm actually liking this look. See, I told you, I don't like the look of warm palettes. They don't do something to me. But then I get them on and I think they're really pretty. I'm gonna bump up Lush right here. And I'm gonna bump up Fluorescence, which I think that this shade is so pretty, even though it's orange, and I hate orange apparently. And then we'll bump up some of Ember too. I'm working slowly to build up the color, just so we don't make a mess of everything. And then I'm gonna take a little bit of Brick, which I don't think they used for this look, but I want to bring some red in. So I'm keeping that on the outer half of my lash line. I'm forgetting terms for the anatomy of the eye. That's pretty. That added really nice bit of pigmented warmth. I'm not concerned about the mattes in this palette at all. It was some of the shimmers that I raised my eyebrows at a little bit. But I know the mattes are going to be great. So I'm going into Bark. Fantastic that she has this in this palette because it can be used for eyeliner. I guess she did more of like an angle. I'm not copying this look to a T. Just liked her color placement. But she did take that out a bit. Then I'm taking a wee bit more of Ember, the dark shade, and taking that just a little higher and softening that. You can't lie to me, that look is pretty. I'm going to take more of Bark on an angled brush, and we're going to see how this works as eyeliner. I'm just pressing this on the lash line. Now, typically, if you see a dark liner on a Natasha Denona look, she does pull in actual eyeliners from her line that she'll incorporate into the looks that she does. Now, one of the shades that I was concerned with was Crisp. It's just really piecey and flaky and messy. Like, I feel like chunkiness is coming out of this. I don't like how this shade feels. I'm gonna take that, and it does a nice job of just brightening this area, but she's very messy, so I would be careful if you have concealer on. And I think I'm gonna build up a little bit more depth in the outer corner with a little bit more brick, subtly, so it doesn't blend too much into the liner. And then I'm taking some of Petal to see, yeah, that could not brighten my underbrow completely, but if you have a deeper complexion, that could be pretty to clean up the underbrow. But for me, that light shade is gonna be best for blending out darker colors. And then lower lash, just because I haven't used Robin. This one might be a little close to Keen. You know how I feel about shades being too similar to one another in the same palettes, but it's not bad. It does have a little bit more pop there. And then I'm just gonna follow with the pattern of Lush on the inner corner, Fluorescence, more of that satin metallic formula, which pulls more orangey. So pretty. And then I'm gonna take a little bit of brick on the tip of my brush. This is an angled brush, and I'm keeping it tight to the lash. That really adds that true orangey kind of reddish warmth. And then brick to cool it down just a little bit, neutralize it just a little bit. And then maybe some ember. I'm just throwing things on, not too much rhyme or reason. Okay, and then this is calling for a brown liner in the waterline, no? Totally is. And then maybe a little inner corner wing. I'm gonna do that off camera because it doesn't have to do with the palette, but I'll be back. Okay, and then here's the final look using the warm side of the palette. Really pretty. Everything was very easy to use. The only shade that I don't love is Crisp. Even though it's really pretty, it's very chunky, very messy, a little dry. I mean, if you work it out with the glitter glue, you can make it look pretty. You don't have to worry about that, but not the best quality there. Okay, I already know what I'm gonna do. Now, the side of the palette that I'm the most excited about, you can probably guess, is gonna be the more pinky side, not the more corally side. So we're gonna do a halo eye. And of course, Equinox is gonna be the star of the show. So I'm gonna start off with Ren. And I'm gonna do windshield wiper motions above my crease, just a little higher because I'm creating more eyelid space since I don't have a ton of eyelid space to work with. So I'm blending this up high. Really pretty. That could probably work as a blush as well. Okay. Next up, we're taking flows, and I'm putting that on the outer and inner corner. That carries a lot more depth than it looks in pan, which is great news if you have a deeper complexion. Just gonna softly blend this, taking just a little bit more. This is pretty. I feel like it's a little bit more mauve-y. I don't know why I complain about warm palettes so much, and I'm not the only one. I know a lot of you guys too. Warm is pretty though, but there's so many warm palettes. Okay, and then I'm taking Clover, which this shade looks really pretty and deep, on an even tighter blending brush. And I'm just gonna pat it and keep it a little bit lower, and then blend that so we can see the depth that I can get from that. That's pretty. All of these three matte shades were definitely created to create a look, which I didn't mention. She does say, you know, you're supposed to create a look with every quad, with every row, with every column, which I think is kind of true. Kind of. So if you are looking for some inspo and you don't know what looks to create, there's looks created within the palette for you. Okay. And then I do want to play with Rue, but first we need to see this Equinox. We need to see this Equinox shade that Natasha Denona was saying you gotta try this shadow, you gotta try it. It has a little bit of a harder press, and it's very thin. It's not chunky or thick or creamy when you pick it up. You just get a nice thin layer, working it up pretty much to the brow with whatever's left over. And so this is that shade that has that turquoise shift to it. It's pretty. I mean, it's nothing crazy compared to what you can get on the indie market, of course, but I think it's a very pretty shade for what you can get at Sephora for sure. And that adds a nice pop to the palette. It also has really nice contrast with the other colors in this palette to give it a little bit more oomph. And then just to bridge those colors together, I'm gonna take a little bit of Rue and I'm gonna place it on top of Clover using a nice small detail brush. And that's holding its own with pigment. Like, I'm gonna have to go back in with Clover. That's pretty. I'm gonna take a little bit more of that deep matte Clover just on top because I like the matte. And then let's see Fleur, which this is such a pretty soft shade as an inner corner highlight. It's probably a little deep for my complexion as an inner corner highlight, but I want to make it work just for today. But I bet you this shade, let me pop it on my hand. I bet you this shade is gonna be gorgeous all over the eyelid as a one and done look, right? So silky, doesn't have any glitters in there, so it's definitely more of a true metallic. I'm going in with more of Equinox, and I'm just kind of splattering that all over. And then, by the way, did not get any fallout from that eye. And then I'm gonna kind of do the same thing at the bottom. So Ren, you see how I'm keeping the center portion clean? That's what we want. Floss, flows. And then a little bit of Clover. I'm just layering those. Not thinking too hard about it. Then take a small brush with Equinox. Yeah, all of these, even though I might say are swatched a little meh. Not meh, but not wow. I feel like everything's applied really nicely. As expected. Not surprised by that. Gorge. Let me put on some lashes to like really the look. I'll talk about this later in the comparisons, but the Bloom cheek palette though, I mean, I see how the eyeshadow colors came out of the Bloom cheek palette. I'm gonna use that for my cheeks today. I haven't used this in forever, so I'm starting off with just a little bit of the blush. This blush definitely goes better with this look. These two sides are very different from one another, much more different than I thought they were gonna be. It's like almost two separate palettes. But obviously, there's looks that you can do where they'll look pretty. I'm thinking for this side, this one, the Duo Glow, is gonna be better. So I'll just kind of keep that towards the apple of my cheek. Just for a little glow. I thought that since we were doing the whole Bloom palette, might as well do the cheek palette. That highlight's pretty. And then for lips, especially with this eye, I think Beso for my collection is gonna look pretty. Kind of is a bridge between the two colors, no? That's the perfect lip to bridge the two together. I do think the looks that I got are very pretty, and it's not a surprise to me because I always do this, but I really love the warm eye like a lot. I think it's stunning. So I mean, we could tell right away from looking at this palette, it is nothing groundbreaking, nothing new and innovative, but what is anymore? And a lot of you thought that this resembled a lot of different Natasha Denona palettes, so I'm gonna take you over to a few comparisons right now. Okay, here are some comparisons. This is Bloom, this is I Need a Warm. And you know what's crazy? Bloom is making I Need a Warm look neutral. There really is not that many crossovers, if I'm being honest. There's some similarities that could pull similar on the eyelid, but not many. This is so much more pinky peachy, whereas this one is, I mean, it's neutral warm, right? But this looks so neutral. It's completely changed how it looks. That's how warm and peachy this is. One on top of the other so you can see. I didn't end up swatching these because there's like a handful of shades that will be similar, but overall the vibes, I think the looks are going to be very different between these two. Now retro, completely different. I thought they would be similar. Now it's only this portion of the palette that is similar to the retro palette, like maybe this shade and this shade, or this shade and this shade might pull similar. This shade and this shade might pull similar. So there's a total of maybe 2 or 3 shades that kind of look the same, but other than that, these two are very different. Bronze palette is notoriously Natasha Denona's warmest palette. Complete different tones of warm other than High Degree and Ember. I'd say the rest maybe 2 shades similar. The rest are very different. This is more yellowy golden warm. This is more pinky peachy warm. So these are also quite different. It was also requested to see against Biba, and there's a few shades that I would say are pretty similar. Obviously a different style of packaging. Biba is much, much, much more neutral. But at the top here, I do have my Bloom swatches, and then at the bottom, I do have some swatches of Biba. I would say on that more pinky portion of the Bloom palette, there's a couple more similarities, but not much with the peachy side of the palette. Honestly, I feel like this Bloom palette is more unique to the line than I anticipated. I think individually you can find each shade or something close to in Natasha Denona's line, but as a palette, as a whole, it does read differently than the ones that I compared it to today. You guys, surprisingly, I mean, it's not unique, I'm not going to say that, but if you have other Natasha Denona palettes, it's not going to be like you already have half the colors. Of course, if you have a lot of Natasha Denona palettes, you can pull similar colors to each of these. So nothing breaking the mold here, but it's definitely more different from other palettes than I thought, which I'm very happy about. So my overall impressions about this palette, I like it. I mean, right, I like it. The thing is, I don't really have any bad notes about this palette at all. I love the looks that I created, and surprisingly, like, these two sides are so different from one another. I like that versatility. I feel like for a midi palette, this does have a decent amount of versatility. Sometimes in the past, when Natasha Denona does a really themed palette, you can only get so many looks out of it. I feel like this one is going to offer you some variety, which is fantastic. You're putting money into it. You want to be able to create a lot of different looks. I like the different mix of formulas, the ratios of shimmers to mattes, the varying depths here. I think this is a very well put together palette. It's just a matter of if you're going to enjoy the colors. And for me, time's gonna have to tell, because it doesn't sing to my soul for what I love in an eyeshadow palette, but I actually might end up reaching for it depending on kind of what wardrobe I'm gonna be wearing with spring upcoming. I actually think I might reach for this one a lot. But quality-wise, if you've been enjoying the quality of the most recent Natasha Denona palettes, I think you're going to enjoy this one. It's no different. The only shade that I thought could have been better was Crisp, just because it's very flaky. But other than that, I'm really happy. The mattes blended beautifully. The shimmers are super pretty. An overall very easy to use palette, which is why we love Natasha Denona. She's definitely presenting at Sephora the best quality shadows that you can get right now. So I hope you guys enjoyed this review. Let me know your thoughts below on the palette. Do you feel how I feel? Did it run warmer than you expected? Are you excited for it? If you've gotten yours in the mail already, let me know your thoughts down below. Make sure you subscribe to my channel for more, because I'm definitely going to be talking about this palette a lot more on my channel, and definitely will be wearing it for sure, because I think you can get some really pretty one and done and two and done looks together. Like, these two are calling my name. So I'm excited to see what light, bright, springy looks I can get from this. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video and found it helpful. And I will see you guys in the next one. Bye guys, have a good one.
It's delicious.